We're back in the Z4 Coupe, and this video we're going to be talking about the third outing at track. The last time I left you, we'd been to the track a couple of times, done a few sessions at Cadwell Park and at Blighton, and not too long afterwards I booked a track evening at Cadwell Park and did a few little small improvements to the car beforehand. So the last time we spoke, we'd got the KW V2s on the car, the KW 5 kilo-ish springs at the front, and I'd swapped over to the Suplex Sport springs, which are kind of a standard spring rate at the back for daily comfort, really, for road use, and to be a better road and track car. With the idea that being a divorced spring setup at the back, I could easily swap in the KW springs, which are a progressive spring up to 12.5 kilos per millimetre at the back, for track days. I didn't do this for the little bits and bobs I had previously, because they were just sessions on the end of other track days. Before this track day at Cadwell Park, I did swap those in, and before that track day I'd also swapped to the 27mm E46 M3 front anti-roll bar, so up from 25mm standard on this car, and I'd also given the car a bit of camber. So as the car arrived to me, it was lowered and had 1.1 degree of camber, or just under 1.1 degree of negative camber across the front axle, and about 2 degrees of negative camber on the rear axle. And I think one of the other things that shone at Cadwell and at Blighton, along with the fact that it was all a bit too soft and floppy, was there's a desperate need for some front camber. So I spoke to a friend of mine, Ian Fleming, at Carbotech Europe. Carbotech, wonderful brake pads. None of the cars that I have at the minute are really extreme enough to warrant Carbotech pads, but in the past, where I've required a really extreme pad or required a best in market pad for a given operating window, Ian has always looked after me. So a big shout out to Ian at Carbotech. Excellent pads. Excellent level of help directly from someone with direct experience, and also he's not pushing sales on you, which is really refreshing. So thank you, Ian, for your help in this and with previous brake pads. But Ian makes camber plates, fixed camber plates for a bunch of BMWs. It might be other cars as well, but a bunch of BMWs. And for my car, he made me a set of stage 1 camber plates, so they would add 0.7 degrees of negative camber across the front axle, or to each side. I was really tempted to go for his stage 2 plates, which would add 1.7 degrees of camber. We weren't 100% sure that they'd fit, with this being a slightly different chassis. And also I didn't want to over camber it for road use and end up correcting the car all the time down the road. So we went with the stage 1, added 0.7 degrees of camber. For the first track days, I had removed the camber pins and pushed the the top of the struts as far inward as possible in the factory slots. So perhaps I'd got to about 1.3 degree generously of front camber. Now, when I fitted the camber plates, I'll pop some pictures or some videos in of how they work. They basically just allow the strut to move inwards within the chassis, within the turrets, without any adjustment at the top. So you don't have the bearing at the top as you would with an adjustable camber plate, and therefore you don't have the introduction of NVH, which is why for me this is a much preferable option. So we've moved in the struts at both front sides. However, when I fitted them, I also fitted an ultra racing front strut brace, and I think in doing so I'd actually limited the adjustment in the slots by the introduction of the way that it was fitted, the slots of the ultra racing bar, and there was some washer nut fittings or washered nut fittings on the top that bolted it to the strut, and I think there was just interference in various places that meant that I wasn't in the far in position in the factory slots. So I think that I've probably gone up to about 1.8 degrees of negative camber for these excursions at Cadwell. So we've got the thicker front anti-roll bar, we've got a little bit more camber, we've got some stiffer rear springs. We should be ready to go at the track. I was on the D-Mac track tyres again, 225 square, very cheap. Bought them purely because they were cheap. They were 150 quid for 4 tyres. Just saved me melting road tyres, and I didn't want to go out and spend a load of money on what is quite a budget-friendly track car. I don't need to be doing the fastest lap times possible, but something that won't melt and hopefully perform fairly reliably at the track was great. So these D-Macs have done the job. And it was vastly improved. As you'd expect, we've got some more spring weight at the rear, got some better roll stiffness at the rear. The front end turned better with the front anti-roll bar, just keeping things a lot more level and helping the car to feel like it moves more quickly to your inputs. It's not instantaneous, nothing like that. It's not like a proper track car, but just one of the most noticeable things from the first outing was you turned and there was just slop everywhere. So through doing those things, we've pushed it along, and I'll have put some videos in here that show probably a reasonable improvement in pace and commitment since the last time I was out. Now we went to the track. I went on an evening track day, so I didn't have any tools or anything with me. I just rocked up at the track in the car, had the tyres on ready to rock and roll, the wheels on rather, ready to rock and roll. And the first session I went out, I thought, something wrong here. There's quite possibly something wrong with this car. It was doing funny stuff. When I did the last video, I said what it needs is the front anti-roll bar fitting, the springs fitting, and an alignment. And what did Matt not do? This idiot didn't do the alignment. So don't be like me, don't be an idiot, get it aligned before you go out. But I got excited, booked a track day, and did it. And my alignment angles, there's no way they're all right. However, what I noticed on track was that it wasn't reliably. So I felt like the rear of the car was towing out and it was steering from the rear, but not reliably so. So, you know, if a car wants to rotate and wants to steer from the rear, that's fine. You can drive around it, you can adjust to it. But you really need it to do so reliably, so you know when it's going to do it. This seemed to be somewhat dynamic rear steer. And I think the culprit is the rear trailing arm bushes. So fitted to this car are a set of Mailer HD rear trailing arm bushes, along with some cheapo trailing arm bush limiters, which aim to reduce the amount of movement of the bush in the little bracket and the arm in the bush. Because I think this is a bit of a problem on these cars. You get that sort of dynamic tow when the car's loaded up differently. And I don't think they really do enough, to be honest. So I think that's what to blame. So the first time I went out, I thought, oh, this is a bit weird. I'm not sure about this. But I sort of stuck with it. I thought, look, I've done a lot of track days over the years. If something feels like it's gonna undo itself, there'll be a noise, it'll get worse. I sort of thought, right, well, don't go mad, just stick with it, see if you can learn how the car's behaving. And I did, and I grew in confidence with the car, and I bonded with the car, and I sort of felt towards the end of the track evening, this was the best I'd felt with this car so far, and I really enjoyed it. Pace on the DMAC tyres and with the car, you know, pretty road orientated, was pretty good. I think someone came over and described it as the silent assassin, because it wasn't making much noise, but it was about the fastest thing on track. So a bit of track knowledge, a bit of you know, some grip from the four corners, but the car was competent. It didn't feel particularly track sharp. It felt like an improvement, but it also felt like there's still work to do. So, you know, we're nudging it in the right direction fairly slowly. It does feel like a rear wheel drive car behaves nicely at the track. It's good fun to drive to the track in comfort, do a track evening, and then drive home again, which is exactly what I want this car for. So an improvement. The balance still felt a little towards understeer. I think it needs more camber. There were times where I thought to myself when out on track, oh, it feels like it's begging for more camber. And also more stiffness again. You can't have your cake and eat it, can you? You can't have a car that's really nice and compliant and has good ride quality on the road and also be, you know, reactive and planted at the track. So more work to be done. But we have nudged it in the right direction. I'm not going to blabber on about it in this video. There will be more videos to come that show you what I do about this. I've got lots of ideas, and we'll develop it slowly over the course of the next year or so that, you know, when I do get to the Nürburgring in 2026, you know, it's performing nicely at the UK tracks by that point, and hopefully is a nice car to drive there, and then an enjoyable track capable car when we get there.